This is the Youth Soccer Evolution Podcast, episode number 5. Thanks again for tuning in to the Youth Soccer Evolution Podcast. My name is Ernesto Diaz. I'll be your host. On episode 5, we get the opportunity to learn from and listen to the interview with George Mason University alumni, KephernFuller. After graduating George Mason, he traveled to the Netherlands, where his playing attracted the interest of Camber Leeuwarden. He trained in the Netherlands with a Dutch club for several months, but was ultimately unable to secure a contract due to work permit issues. Upon returning to the United States, Kephern set out to use what he had learned during his playing time in the Netherlands and establish Joga SC. Before we get into the interview, I just want to ask that if you like our show, give us a positive review on iTunes or Stitcher Radio. Thank you again for all the feedback I've received. You, the listeners, are the ones that keep me motivated to keep doing this. So again, I appreciate it, and hopefully it's helping and benefiting young players out there. So we start the interview with Kephern. We asked him to tell us a little bit about himself so we can get to know him better.
I was an Army kid, Army military brat, so I kind of moved around from place to place. Lived in Panama for a little while, and then to Washington State, finally to North Carolina, where I was around 8 or 9 years old. I was able to see soccer for the first time on the youth level, and was able to join, like a rec amateur team. And after playing, rec amateur and playing a lot in the playgrounds there, I was able to make my first travel team called the Sidekicks. And from there, just fell in love with the game. Eventually moved down to Georgia when I was 16 years old. Was able to meet my Dutch coach, Alex Palma, who then would take us on tours to go to Holland and play and, experience European football. And that just, obviously just opened up a new doors, new horizons, new views on how the game should be played. And, really took the game for me, seeing it from, obviously some of the problems that we face in America, from it just being, more kind of a thing to do, to actually seeing the environment and the culture where, they it's very serious from young, from 5, 6 years old, all the way up to the pro level. So seeing that, that just, took me to a different level of wanting to understand the game, learn the game, become better at the game. And 4 years, I spent 4 years at George Mason University, played there, got the typical college experience, I guess typical as in, a lot of hard running, physical play, but, tactically understanding the game, a philosophy and a style of play weren't really built into our education, and it's, it was a college experience. But from there I was able to get an opportunity to go to Camber Leeuwarden back in 2006 to go on trial, to get an opportunity there. My same old Dutch coach had actually become the general manager there, and I was able to spend over a month there. Almost got the possibility of being signed, but due to me not having an EU passport and being too expensive, I didn't get the opportunity to sign for the club. But even with that, I was able to stay in Holland for another 7 to 8 months and experience the soccer culture there. And then I went to Belgium on trial with a couple of clubs as well. So, and now I guess to make a long story short, I kind of took my experiences from age 16 on in Europe, going on tours and going on trials, to now giving my players an opportunity to go to Europe and go on trials and go on tours to show them that soccer is a big world in soccer, and that the opportunity is there for you. But now we just have to, you have to put the mentality and the culture and the environment together to give you those opportunities.
And Kephern, and when you returned, you also started Joga SC, which we'll talk about later on. But we'll also love to learn about that as well.
Yes.
I think when parents listen to this, when young coaches listen to this, they want to know about your experience growing up. So I know you said, make a long story short, but we really love that story about you growing up here. Take us more, like how did you first get started? When you first said, okay, there's a soccer ball, I'm going to start playing, or did your parents say, hey, come on over and play? Tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, well, I guess just breaking down a little bit culturally, the background I come from is that, when we finally moved to North Carolina, most of my family, the African-American family, really don't have a cultural connection to soccer. So my mom, at that time, I got divorced, so she was a single mom with me and my sister. At that time, there wasn't really the parent involvement of saying, oh, you're going to go play the sport. I kind of found it on the playground. The kids were playing at the school I went to, and they played it every day. It was pretty unique places in Roanoke Rapids, North Carolina. And they just, out of all sports, nobody was playing football. It was soccer. They had a little caged, it was a caged dirt area there, and we would just play every day. And I remember I was just, I just fell in love with it, and then after school care, where I had to go to, they were also playing. So I would play every day for, 3 hours a day, constantly just playing soccer. And, I fell in love with it. And then a lot of the kids who were at the school, I had started playing rec, and so, of course, I approached my mom and said, hey, I really want to play soccer. I want to play on the team. And so for about...
And how old were you at that time?
I was about 8 years old.
Okay.
Yeah, so
all right, go ahead.
Yeah, so about 8 to 9, I kind of played rec soccer, but then when I hit about 10, there was the team in that small town was called the Sidekicks, and it was like the team to be on if you're a good soccer player in the school. So I was able to try out with that team, but I barely made it. I think they had a clinic a week before their tryouts, and one of their coaches, an English coach, I think his name was Mark Redmond, English coach, he was actually leaving the club that summer, but he had saw me at the clinic. And so when I went to tryouts, they barely selected me, and the head coach of the group who was running it said, without Mark Redmond's, kind of seal of approval, I wouldn't have been put on the team. So it was like, immediately I got challenged, and so from there it was great because that kind of followed me out throughout my career. Even that young, saying, okay, maybe you weren't going to get selected was a great thing for me, and also motivated me throughout my career. It's something that I try to tell youth players or every player coming up. I said, you need to be people to doubt you. That's something that's a great motivator when you're trying to make it to the top level. If you're expecting everybody to praise you and to say, you're the best player and, everything you do is amazing, you won't make it to the top level, because that's what the top level is about. It's always, you have to be more critical of yourself than anybody else. But that experience, was great. But, I guess coming from the parent involvement angle, with my mom being my mom was a single parent, and then also culturally, my mom was always about, look, you need to listen, you need to work hard, and whatever the coach wants. She never put any kind of pressure on me she put pressure on me, hey, you better play well, I'm out here watching, kind of like that. But she never put she never put the coaching staff or anything under pressure to say, oh, why isn't he playing here, or he should be playing here. She stayed kind of she understood her role. Her role was to support me, bring me to games, and, bring me to practices. And, pretty much, a lot of my development, a lot of my soccer journey was because I wanted it. My mom knew nothing about it, especially coming from that African-American culture here in the U.S., where the game hasn't really taken off in that culture or seen in that culture as representative of us. Right. She wasn't, she wasn't, I've seen different types where parents try to step in and control, and try to control the coaching staff or control the situations. And really for me, I got in there, and every situation I've ever been in, I tried to handle it myself, because I wanted to be better, or I wanted to find out what the coaches wanted. I took independence over my development,
Yeah. And so then you played some rec, and then at what point did you start playing travel?
Around 10 years old. So at 10 years old, I started to play travel.
That was the Sidekicks team.
Yeah, that was the Sidekicks team, yeah. So I started to play travel, and I played with them until the age of 12, and then we moved down to Atlanta, Georgia. around 12, 13, moved down to Atlanta, Georgia. Got down there again, like we didn't know the system down there, the teams down there. Played one more season of rec down there because I didn't know where to go, and we didn't necessarily have the funds to find some of the more expensive teams. But I ended up joining one club team around 14. I think can't remember the name. I think we were called Premier FC or something. And then I joined a team called the Mustangs when I was like 15 years old. And then finally I met my Dutch coach at 16. His name was Alex Palma, and he ran a club called the Red Wings Soccer Club. And that's when a lot of things changed for me. I'd always played a lot on my own. Where we moved to in Atlanta, or in Marietta, Georgia, there's actually a lot of people from. It's very multicultural. So there's a lot of people from we had like a big Brazilian contingent in the apartment buildings I lived. So we would go play, and I remember that I would play with them and say, "Hey, are you from here?" I'm like, "No." Are you from the States? Are you from somewhere else? No, I'm from the States. I'm not from Africa or Caribbean. They thought I had a soccer background, and I didn't. Culturally, for my family. And, they say, "Oh man, if you went to Brazil, you would do well, or, you would learn so much more, you would do this." And so, I had always been drawn to that, the being involved in a soccer culture where the game was the most important thing, and, how they played, how they touched the ball, the skill, the confidence, the swagger, everything. And so from there, getting the opportunity to join the Red Wings, our coach would take us on tours to Europe. So at U17, we got our first tour to the Netherlands. We were able,
and that's what opened up your eyes to a whole new world.
Yeah, a whole new world, man. It's just, I'd been overseas before. That wasn't a shock thing, but just being in that environment, seeing the youth academies. I mean, we played Sparta Rotterdam. Had amazing club youth facilities, and we played a number of other clubs like AZ Alkmaar, and you just see like everything is geared towards developing the kids for a purpose, a direction, a goal. And so you come back to the States, and we have all these clubs, and people say development, but development for what? Like what's the goal? What's the actual direction? When we talk to a parent or a player, what's the actual goal that we're setting out for the players? Like, when we talk to them, is it just to say, okay, we want you to stay on the team for next year, or are we making plans to get them, to where they should be? If it's pro level, or a lot of clubs focus on college, But I think that's one thing that's heavily missing in the U.S. that you see over there. If you're at an amateur club over there, that's your level, but even amateur clubs there get scouted by pro clubs, constantly, even at the older age groups around 14, 15. So it's like you see that direction is much better for the players.
Yeah, it's a great point about player development here.
Yeah.
Keph, I want to stay on your journey. So you were 16, 17, and you're heading out to see some of the Dutch clubs, get some training there,
yeah.
And then you come back, and what ends up happening with you? Where do you go?
Yeah, so I was still with that club, the Red Wings, after going on those tours. So we still go around and play in the the bigger U.S. tournaments. So we went out to, I guess back in the day, Tampa Bay Sun Bowl used to be kind of big. I guess I don't know how big that is anymore, if it still exists. But we used to play in that and play in Nomads in San Diego. And from there I got recruited by George Mason to get an opportunity to possibly go to their school. So, I had offers from George Mason. I was looking a little bit at UNC Wilmington. And so after I took my visit to George Mason, up in the D.C. area, and I just kind of, I kind of fell in love with the area. I didn't know about how to get opportunities in Europe. One of the things, I guess, in my journey, I remember I was when I was 17, we were at one of the showcases, and my coach, Alex, he had our player evaluation. We were in the hotel, and he told me, he said, you are 60% in everything. He kind of just threw out a number, at me, and I said, okay, what does that mean? He's like, if you focused on these areas of the game and improved to perfect yourself in these areas, you could be a big-time player. But even then, I didn't know what it meant, the type of work I needed to put in individually, the type of work I needed to put in tactically about the game, and I kind of wish I had that moment back, or I had those years back, because I think it would have made a even bigger step for me as a player to play at a higher level. But even with that being said, he showed me, he kind of told me, it's like, you need to challenge yourself. You need to take your game to the next level if you want to be a certain kind of player. And so, I took those words to heart, but I didn't really understand what that meant, And so from there, going to college, went to George Mason, you get there and it's obviously it's physically it's going to be demanding. You're playing with, some of the seniors are 22, 23 years old. You're playing, it's the first year of college, and you're in it. And the thing that I saw was, it's just the focus is not really there on the player development, because there's really not a purpose for you there. The purpose is, okay, to go into the college program, win games, and then in the spring everyone goes party and do whatever. But it's not really focused on, hey, we're trying to get players here. We're trying to really develop players for a purpose. And so for me there, it was, I enjoyed the experience. But I kind of, when I was about 21, I found out that one of, this was about 2005, 2006 time, my coach Alex Palmer was going to take over Conver Leeuwarden. But also in that year, I found out one of our my old club mates who used to play at Red Wings, he was a year older than me. His name was Kendi Treshik. He went to Holland around 2005 to get an opportunity just to go there for 3 months and, train with clubs and see what opportunities could happen for him. Well, with him being, he was there for about a month. He scored some crazy goals, did well in some tournaments, played with an amateur club. He got trials with Feyenoord, AZ Alkmaar, opportunities in Germany and all these other places, and, after being there just for a month. Now, he had played at Penn State. I think he had a pretty good career there, but it was crazy just reading. I was on the, BigSoccer.com reading. All of a sudden, the guy was playing at Penn State. I don't think he had all the accolades that people have. Big clubs like, you're talking about Feyenoord, AZ Alkmaar, and it was just crazy. And so when I read that, I said, I would love to just go over there maybe for 3 months and check out the amateur system and go play there and see what can happen for me. So I kind of set up the same kind of thing with my coach. He was in the process of taking over the club then. So he said, hey, you could play for an amateur club in Holland, train there, and then, if you're good enough, maybe sometimes train with the pro club if you're good enough. So when I got there, they first sent me to train with the youth academy, their U18. So I was about 22, and they were U18. So, you kind of look at that like, oh, man, I'm the oldest guy here. But it was actually it was actually very good, because I was able to kind of acclimate to everything. The speed of play would be fine because I was older, and it actually got me ready for when they called me up to train with the first team. And actually the crazy thing is, the head of the U18s, his name was John DeHope. He in the future he would end up running Conver's Academy and also becoming one of the head scouts for FC Groningen. And I'll explain more about him later, but he saw me and worked with me for 2 weeks. I went to training camp with them. That's what gave me the opportunity with the first team, because they were, I think they kind of saw, okay, maybe there's a player here, and then I worked well with the youth. They liked my attitude, and then I got an opportunity to train with the first team. And you walk into the locker room, and it's just totally different. Like, no one said anything. When I came in, it was just like quiet, and I was like, okay, like sitting there nervous. You're about to really enter a training session, and everything's kind of on the line. It was crazy. The captain had to come in. I think he was around 30, 32, 33 years old. And he came in. And he said, "Hey, clear out the way," and moved all the other guys out the way. But no one said anything at first. And then, I had that first training session, and it was just crazy. It was we did some technical drills based on receiving, striking, shooting, and I was just on. I was just very focused. And then we played a 45-minute scrimmage and played well, did well there. And I remember my coach, Alex Bauman, telling me, he's like, well, we're going to look into the rules, see if we can maybe sign you. And maybe I had the trial day with the first team on a Monday. He said, maybe we could sign you and maybe you could play by Friday. And I was like, what? It was like a whirlwind,
Yeah.
But with all that being said, when they found out that they couldn't sign me or I was going to be too expensive because I didn't have an EU passport, it was just crazy to be in that kind of environment and how things move. If you're doing well and there's an opportunity and someone sees something for you, it's crazy to see how things move there. Now, the great thing about my experience is that I've been on that side where everything goes very fast. Then I've also had the failure side as well because, I had an opportunity after Comber couldn't sign me, I had an opportunity to kind of maybe go to Denmark, but I met my wife in Holland, so she didn't want to go to Denmark, so I made my way back here. And, I got the itch again around like 23, 24, and I tried to go to Belgium. But I had the other side where I didn't do well, and I had an agent try to set up some things for me, and I went to first, second division because they heard I was at Cumber. Then things didn't work out for me there. Then I went third division, then fourth division. So it's like I've experienced both, where the pure elation, like, oh my gosh, I could be playing in a pro game this weekend after being here for a month, and the other side where you're trying to make it, trying to do it, but things don't work out for you either way, and so it helped shape me, and it's helped me focus and determine how I want my club to run, kind of going forward, through my experiences, pretty much.
Yeah, and I just want to clarify for the listeners, when we talk Dutch second division, I mean, we're not talking about a small little club over there. We're still talking about $1 million clubs, right?
Yeah, I mean, they have. I wouldn't say they have. Yeah, I mean, it's $1 million clubs, but I wouldn't say that the budgets are astronomically huge. But yeah, I mean, they. I don't want to say I know anything about their budget or how much they spend, but I think it's. I would assume their budgets are $3, $4, $5 million. Some of the clubs, not every club, but I assume some of the clubs are around that much. And just and just to clarify, like a non-EU player, I think is around 250,000 euros. So if they were going to sign someone like me, being second division, that would eat a lot into the budget.
Right.
They have.
So I mean, they have to really think about when they get a player from a foreign player then coming in.
Yeah, they have to really think about that, and most clubs don't even have the money, even at the top level. With Eredivisie, like Cambuur Leeuwarden, the club I was at, is now in the Eredivisie, is in the top level, and it's crazy to see what my coach was able to stay there for 5 years, and I think the last 3 years he was there, they almost won. They were always in the playoffs for promotion, and then I think a year or two after he left, they finally moved up and got promoted. So, that club went from not having that many fans to having sellouts and really improving themselves. So even there at the second division, the leagues are I wouldn't say the league, but the club are still supported because they have ambition,
Yeah.
They want to be at the
top.
Yeah,
trying to get there to the top. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, they have ambition. So.
Yeah. So and then you talked a little bit about you came back to the States, mm-hmm. and then that's when you started developing players on your own.
Yeah, it was crazy. I was able to see the Dutch street soccer culture in Holland. Like, you would go there, I would sometimes show up to a court while I was there and go play, and there would be like this 12 or 13-year-old kid. I'm like, all right, let's see who he's got. And he would be sick, with skills and confidence. And so I saw that, and I was, the guys you see there, they'd be extremely technical, extremely skilled, touch, passing, dribbling, everything. I guess that's total football mentality, but it was, also the street part as well was huge in the culture there. And so I thought about, I would look at the kids that would train and play here, and a lot of the kids just didn't even have the basics of the touch, the technique, the control, and most of all, like the swagger and the flavor. They just didn't have that. They just played. and just ran after the ball, and everyone's just working hard. And for me, I thought about it. I said, you need to. I wanted to build like a culture within my club where players start first with the street. So when after I started working I was working at a youth club called FPYC, helping coach some youth teams there. After a while, I started taking some of the players and saying, hey, let's start doing street soccer as well. Playing every day and working with the ball and get a boombox out there, have music blasting, forming a culture. And so from there, that's kind of the idea where Joga got born, we start from street soccer. We start with young kids, they're playing and technically, I would teach them technique, work on technique, but they would see me not so much as the coach when they were younger, but as like the bigger brother, uncle, teaching them skills and working on their ball or working with the ball and creativity. So, that's kind of where we kind of birthed the idea from. And then from there, taking them from the street and then building an idea of a club philosophy about this is how we play and do that. Even then, we've been working on it for the past years. Like, we're still not done. We still got things that we're still implementing that we're working on trying to build,
Yeah, and did you say we play every day?
Yeah, the way I had it is that they would play every day, so we would have the kids, if they were younger, we would have them, I would say 5 to 6, probably 5 to 6 days a week, and then they would have a game on the weekend. So,
yeah, what did the parents think about that?
People thought we were insane at first until they started seeing their kids and see what happened. To that, they would say, whoa, like, how did you learn that? Oh, my gosh, where are you getting trained at? Everybody was like, where are you getting trained at? And I always used to be like, we show up here and the kids were playing, 2-3 hours a day, we're playing, the kids are working with the ball and they got the creativity and, it really made a difference. Now, these are a small group of kids, but they were some of the most talented kids. Like, I would go and see which kids had the mindset, too. It wasn't just, oh, this is for everyone. No, it was more like, okay, we're going to be serious about this. Let's go, and we're going to play every day, and there's going to be music. So it made it fun, too, but we built the key word I keep using is a culture that as soon as you start building a culture, the things that people thought weren't normal become normal, And then the kids, as we started going, the kids started getting an opportunity. They would play for their local clubs. At PYC, the club I coached at, the youth club I coached at, we would send the players there, and they would go play, and people would be like, oh, my gosh, where are these players coming from? What are they doing? Everyone wanted to know what we were doing. And, we were just saying, hey, we're very focused on the game. And from there, we brought a couple teams to Europe in 2012 to get some opportunities, but we also had players get trials with pro clubs. So one of our players, when he was 9 years old, went to FC Groningen for a trial for 3 or 4 days. And then one of our other players just recently went to Feyenoord on trial. And actually today we got 2 other players who are going to go to PSG for a week to go on trial and train with the academy there. So it's something that started so small, but those players who are very dedicated to it, they've all now gotten opportunities, or most of them, a good number of them have gotten opportunities to go over to Europe and to see if, doors can open for them. So people thought it was crazy, but we're seeing just a little bit of the fruit off of the work we put in for the past 5, 6 years.
Yeah. So what kind of recommendation then can you give to parents or young coaches when, because I think a lot of the times what happens is parents think, I'm going to send my kid to this one camp for this one weekend, and he's going to be one of the best players of all time.
Yeah. I guess I talked to the coaches first, because I think, listen, it's first for the coaches to determine what they want to do. Who do you want to become? And then that controls or dictates everything that you're going to do going forward. Who do you want to become? It doesn't mean that you're there now. Like, I'm a step closer to my goal, but I'm nowhere near my goal, I feel, for about where we're trying to go. But they have to determine where they want to go first as a young coach, and also determine what are you in it for. If you're in it for to just make a lot of money, Yeah, there's a way that you can do that. We have a lot of those coaches, a lot of those clubs, like people have figured out that kind of system. But it's also important for if you're just trying to also not just take care of yourself economically, but also create something that you can say that create a legacy that you've taken a player from here and got them to somewhere else. Then you have to start setting those steps, those steps up, and you have to be brave and say, "This is how we're going to do it." And you're going to have people that challenge you, doubt you, say, "No, I can't work." Okay, why are you doing this? Okay, you're insane. You can have all those things, but that's your fuel. That's what gets you going every day to say, okay, this is the goals that we're going to try to reach. This is what we're going to try to attain. And it's going to be a rocky road, and there's going to be times where you're like, okay, I don't know. But you have to have a goal in place, or you're just there. So to me, I couldn't just handle just being there. Because if you're just there, then, to me, it's not, I got to have more passion, I got to have passion about it. I got to have something that just gets me going, I just don't want to be at a club just to coach and say, okay, I'm making some money or something. You got to have some ambition about yourself. And then if you're a coach like that, then you go to the parents, and then you tell the parents, this is what we're trying to accomplish with the kids. This is what we're trying to do, and get them to buy into it. Some will, some won't. That's fine, but you got to first determine who you are before I think we even talk to parents.
Yeah, because when you started, you said, hey, we brought them together. We try to play every day, mm-hmm. And then you mentioned the boom box. You had some music going there.
Yeah.
Creating that environment. What was that like? What feedback did you get, or what drawbacks were there?
The feedback I got, was really. What was really great is that there was an older youth team I was coaching, and a lot of them there was like 3 or 4 of them that had brothers. They kind of knew me already, like the younger brothers when they were like 4, 5, 6 years old. They all knew me, and I said, so obviously, I think you probably maybe seen this too. When there's an older brother, the little brother, if he's watching, if he shows up to practice, they're normally sometimes a little bit better, at the same age. Yeah. If you saw the older brother, because they're picking up things faster. They want to imitate. They want to be better than their brother. All those different things. They want the attention. So I had already that kind of relationship with them, and then from there, I kind of started. Anytime I would coach a clinic or something, I would specifically reach out and find the better players and say, hey, would you like to do something that's more serious, even from as young as 5, as young as 4, just say, do you want to do something? To the parents, I'm like, I've been to Europe, and I know they focus, they find kids, the culture is already there, but the kids are already in clubs where being developed and learning. And so from there, I started, getting kids, 5, 6, 7, 8 years old together and bringing them together and then building a culture. Well, when people start seeing someone's better, some kids are better, then other people are asking, okay, what's happening? And that's what kind of helped a catalyst as well. But I never was trying to get hey, let's get a lot of kids. It was let's focus on a group of kids and focus on making them better, And
so what was the reaction like when you brought out the music?
You know what? They just kind of went with it. Nobody said, yeah. In fact, I started getting there okay, well, kids just really love the music. It got to the point when they were 8 or 9, when we started doing training sessions, they're like, where's the music? I'm like, hey, okay. I was like, hey, okay, we need to teach now, so now they need to listen. This isn't street soccer. But, I guess that was one of the drawbacks is taking myself out of just being street soccer to now their coach. There's a balance. There's a part when they need to listen and you're trying to teach your philosophy and everything. And there's a part that's the street, and that's the freedom, that you can do you and you can be yourself and you can play and everything. And then there's the teaching part. So, yeah, the kids loved it. They had their own songs, they would dance, they would do their thing, and they had the flavor, the creativity, and that showed in their games, that they were so confident, especially when they were so young. So, yeah, but the parents, they jumped on board, especially when you see your kid loving it and getting better. Obviously as a parent,
Yeah, and then you brought up the point about the younger brother or sister usually being better, and I've seen that too. And my thought on that was that normally when we have a child, if they're 7, 8, we try to get them into soccer, mm-hmm. And by the time they're 9 or 10, they might get into it.
Yeah.
where their little brother or sister wants to be like them. So they'll start kicking the ball because they see them at 2 or 3 years old, and they're ready to go. I mean, so let's transition over, and this is one of the questions that we ask all of our guests, and I'm really interested to see what your response will be. Let's pretend that you had a 5-year-old today.
Yeah.
What would be your course of development for a 5-year-old player if you had your child right now? What would you do?
I guess, well, I'm having a son in October, so I guess I'm going to be able to answer this question really good in 5 years, right?
Oh, yeah, good. Congratulations.
No, thank you. No, I think, the kid has to love the game. You got to let him play. You try to get him in a cultural environment where he looks up to others, where they play. It isn't so much that like I said, street soccer, I think, from the youngest age is the best thing. One of the quotes that we use is kind of something from Renus Michaels is, the most natural education, for a young player when they first started is street soccer, And so that's the first part of education. Like, they play, they learn who they are. They come up with their own style, their own flavor. They learn how to be independent for themselves. That's one thing I always like through our program. I was like, kids need to be independent, how to handle issues or conflicts. Like a lot of kids don't even know how to do that nowadays. And so, that's the first thing I would say. I would say, hey, we're gonna go hit the court. We're gonna go play. Not so much, of course you can do some training with them and different things and work with them individually, but you also got to see your kid's mindset too. Some kids, don't mind sitting with dad and dad teaching them everything. Some kids are like, oh, leave me alone. You know what I'm saying? And let me do my own thing. But what I feel is for my future son is that, we're going to take him to the courts. He's going to play. He's going to ball. He's going to play against a lot of different other people and learn from there first. So that he gets a sense of who he is, his own identity. I don't have to tell him a lot of times I think parents get caught into, when you send them just the organized route where they just go play, they only play in organized leagues. Like, I don't think it's bad that, if they play in organized leagues at 5 or 6, I don't think that's the problem. I think the problem is the kids don't have an identity before they get there, So when the kid doesn't have an identity, he's only listening to what mommy and daddy are saying. Mommy says, run, kick it, score, all those things. That's the only thing that they know. But if they know it, cultures that do, you go to Argentina, you go to Brazil, like, yeah, there might be dads or whatever helping coach and do certain things, but they have a culture of playing outside of just being coached. They have a culture of that, where the kid always has the ball and is working with the ball. So that's pretty much, I guess the best thing for my son would be put him in that type of culture, where it's not just me telling him, what to do.
Yeah, that's great. So you said, obviously just let him play, let him fall in love with the game, but then also create that culture around them of, loving soccer and what it represents to you and your family and the kids.
Yes. I think it's, at home, if you're watching games, if you're paying attention to games, paying attention to matches, and you have a club, and you really support them, kids follow that. They want to imitate. They want to be. I hope my son wants to be like me. So I hope, but no, I think it kind of goes along those lines. But just in the beginning, let them be themselves. I always look at my mom. I always think about mom because my mom let me be myself. She wasn't overbearing and say, why aren't you a player like this? Well, that kid dribbles a lot. Why aren't you like him?
Yeah.
Who
and that's a great point that you brought that up, because a lot of parents feel that they have to be overbearing and being there every single practice. And we're talking about you who, you had trials over in Netherlands. You had got a scholarship to play at George Mason. So you became a very good player. I mean, there's not many kids that get to do what you did. Your mom did it by just giving you the opportunity and putting you into that environment of the soccer environment.
Definitely. And also, and to do those things that I did, or to even go higher, you have to be independent anyway. You have to, because you're on you know, and when you're in those environments, like no one's there to help you through the situation. Yeah, if you make the team, if you're with the club, maybe you can, you know, they'll help you when you're signed, you know, with whatever you need. But they're always looking for someone better. You have to be very, very tough and very, very strong and independent. And so, you know, one thing I guess I advise parents is saying, you know, when your kid's on the field, let them be independent. Let them learn from certain things. Let them learn from different conflicts. You don't have to step in on everything. You don't have to watch every practice. To me, I don't think you need to. You don't need to ask the coach every practice, how is he doing? Your kid needs to fall in love with it. But again, that's for me. That's for me. But that's a culture I try to set up in our club, and then tell them this is how I kind of made my way. You know, and of course, it's not telling parents that they can't be supportive, but when you're overbearing and you try to control the situation, you shouldn't try to control the situation. Like, whatever happens for your kid, if your kid does well and great, he makes the team, great. If he doesn't make the team, great. Now you've got motivation to get better. If he can, or maybe he's not that level. And it's okay to also be realistic with your kid as well. You know, I think sometimes in American culture we're so fearful of the kid feeling bad about themselves. I'm like, your kid will get over not making a team. You know, he'll get over. You know, he should learn that playing time is not guaranteed. You know, that's just. But to me, that's a culture, that's a mentality thing. Like, you know, it shouldn't be. If you're trying to do something at the highest level, so you know, not to misconstrue any listeners. I think if you're on the rec level and you're doing things like that, I understand. You know, but if you're trying to do things pro level, at the highest level, it doesn't work that way. You know, you have to, it's a totally different mindset. You know, so it's important that kids understand how to handle failure, because these are ultimately it's life lessons. You're going to learn, you know, it helps them to prepare them for whichever level they make it to, or if they never play soccer again, or if they go into another field in life or whatever that they do, they need to learn that, and it's okay to learn that from young, you know?
Yeah. Lots of golden nuggets of information from you. Thank you so much.
No worries, no worries.
Moving on then, so what are you working on today? You talked a little bit about Joga SC, and you know you're sending some players over to the Netherlands. How closely are you working with them? You still have your old coach over there, or is he back over here?
He's back over here. He's back in. He actually runs the club. I think the Cherokee Impact back in Georgia, back near Atlanta. So he's there, and so pretty much with Joga. What I've been doing is, you know, the concept I started was first at some of the youth clubs in the area of Fairfax, Virginia, but now we've kind of taken that philosophy really to a place that's dear to my heart, is the inner city. You know, that's a place. It's not so much for, you know, I hear all these people say inner city athletes. No, I'm not thinking athletes. I'm thinking actually the mentality, the culture, because it's kind of funny, like when I first started the street soccer stuff for the, you know, mainly in Fairfax, Virginia, and it's a very multicultural area, you know, I did get some drawback, like, why are you talking about pro soccer? Why are you doing those things? But it's funny, when you go to the inner city and you talk about it, it's a different mentality. They're like, really? Soccer's like that? You know, it's like more intrigued. They want to see what it is. And then, you know, a lot of the inner cities that we're going to, a lot in the African American culture, and I know also from the Latin culture, is that they're intrigued. You know, they see sports not just as a way out, but they're intrigued. They want their kids to get that opportunity. Even if it's, you tell them, oh, there's a slim chance, they still want to take that chance. So I really see the inner city as a place because of the mentality and the culture you could build, that if you start producing players from there, it'll be a knock-on effect, because the opportunity and because of how they see sports, sports heroes in our community is very, very, very important. So there's a culture that I think U.S. soccer misses out on that could be huge, you know. And again, I'm not talking about athletic standpoint, about running fast and jumping high and all that stuff. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about a need that they could, if clubs, if they had the opportunity, the kids would see, they would want to play at the highest level like I did. You know, pretty much I'm trying to recreate myself, but a better version of myself. You know, like I saw it and I was like, man, I wish I knew about this. I would have, if I lived in Brazil, if I lived here, I would have made, as a kid, you always feel those things. Because, I would have loved to have been in that type of environment. And so, and also just for the, for the culture of the game, I think I think there's a difference, when we put the boombox on and there's hip-hop music blaring, kids are moving their bodies. You talk about Brazil, you talk about Argentina, you talk about all these different countries. There's a flavor that they play with that, or a style or identity that identifies them. And so that's one of the ways that we try to not bring the game. We're not bringing soccer to the inner city. We're bringing the inner city culture to soccer. And that's the mentality that we're thinking about. Because everyone thinks about, let's bring soccer there, and they love it. No. Bring their culture to the game, and then that creates a love. Then you can identify with it because it's part of you. It identifies you. And so that's something that we've been focused on, that, I see a lot of people doing a lot of stuff and saying, if we had the inner city, if we had this, and, we get all these great athletes. I was like, I think their mindset's wrong. It's first, culturally, make it cool, not just cool, but make it a part of who they are, make it acceptable for them. And then from there, show them the opportunity, And so I've been able, obviously, to do a lot of work here in the Virginia area, but now we started in D.C. for the past 2 years, and one of the I think she's a 9-year-old girls that we've had in the program for about 2 years now, she got invited to go train in Holland, hopefully in the next year or two, at a club there, slowly building that. But I guess our ultimate goal is we also started with the academy too. So what we're trying to do is take kids from the idea of the street to the academy, and then the last part is from the academy is in placing kids in Europe, whether with a European club or whether with our own club that we're looking to kind of start there, so that we show them the full, I guess, to go full circle, to show them the direction of when they play for our club, this is what you're aiming for, and you're trying to attain that goal. Now, if some of you don't make it, that's fine, but because that's the goal and the direction, every training session, you have to give 100%. The direction and the goal. Even if you don't make it, you're prepared for other things. You're prepared to play in college. You're prepared to go in other areas of your life because you have reached for something that was going to be difficult,
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
So when you talk, I want to make sure I understand, when you talk about bringing the inner city culture into soccer, give me an example of that. How can we do it, in other parts of the country?
Of course, you would want it to happen organically, where kids just play. I think there are a lot of kids that play. I know the Latin culture has a lot of kids that play, But I guess if I'm speaking specifically from an inner city culture or African American culture, I'm sorry, a club, you have to go in there and you have to create it, and you got to go in there and you got to spend real time. This isn't like 1 to 2 days a week and then we have a little game or something. You got to. I guess our focus is the same way I went into Virginia and said, hey, we're going to focus on a small group of players. It's the same thing I did in D.C. We're going to focus on a small group of players. So I don't try to get 300, 400, 500 players. You do a clinic, you do some things, you try to find out, get the players together, and then from there, you try to pick the players who have the mindset for it, who want to do it. Who are, it's so funny, like when I walk into the school, one of the schools we work at KIPP, D.C., is that when I see a kid, and if I start moving the ball and working with the ball, and I see him staring, and he can't take his eyes off of it, and, he's not looking around or looking anywhere else, and then he gets the ball, and he's trying it, and he's trying to impress me constantly. Hey, that's one right there. Even if he's 5 or 6 years old, that's a kid that you want to bring in because he has already that connection. He sees it, he's intrigued. So it's not, a lot of programs try to get, hey, let's try to get mass amount of kids, but then you're not really, to me, I think to really affect the inner city, you got to create a player from there, and then you'll start seeing more kids, the mass amount of kids start playing. But you got to create a real player that they can identify with,
Yeah.
It's kind of, that kind of LeBron plays or MJ plays that inspire the whole group of kids to play. They want to be like them. Even if they're never going to be like them, they do it,
Right.
And so
yeah.
I guess on the small scale, if you're doing something in the inner cities or in the urban areas there, is to think small, first, so that you can implement it. And then like I said, we're trying to build the whole pyramid for ourselves. Unfortunately, U.S. Soccer doesn't have where you can build, we're all interconnected in a promotion relegation system. But, so we can't even take our idea and one day try to match it up against other clubs. But we're trying to build the whole pyramid, hopefully, to Europe,
Right.
and step by step.
Yeah.
So, like I said, people thought it was crazy when we started first in the street, doing 6-7 days a week. And then, we were so crazy where now players are now getting opportunities in Europe. So I'm just saying, hey, they think we're crazy for trying to start a club in Europe. So that's the next frontier. Let's do it,
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, Kephern, again, thank you so much for coming on. We're going to take so much of this, and hopefully coaches and parents can learn from it as well as much as I have. Thank you so much, and we'll talk soon.
All right, no problem. Hey, thank you so much, Ernesto. I appreciate it, man.
Yep, thank you. I want to thank Kephern Fuller again for coming on the show. If you want to reach Kephern Fuller, you can reach him on Twitter at JogaSC, JogaSC. If you want to reach me for feedback on the show, we always appreciate it. You can reach me at Ernesto at youthsoccerevolution.com. You can also visit our website where we have some free resources about player development. I hope you got as much out of this as I did. Kephern had so much good information for player development. One of the things that stuck out to me during the interview is the environment that we expose our kids to. How important that environment is for their development, for their creativity, establishing their identity, as Kephern discussed during the interview. That's something for coaches and parents to understand and look into, how we should nurture the development of each player, letting them establish their own identity as a player based on their characteristics and their personality. I think that's one of the things that gets overlooked many times. That's something for all of you to think about as we approach the next show, and I'll see you on episode 6.